It's been a little while that the theme song actually fit the thing that we're doing, and I was kinda laughing while we was playing through, and I was, like, dancing in the back, and I was like, "Oh, we're actually talking about a scary movie this time." Like, it's so much more fitting than it has been for months now.
I know, I'm so excited about that because, like, I mean, I actually when I changed the music over, it was not long after that we decided to branch out so much more. We're doing a lot of, like, superhero stuff. I'm like, "This does not fit anymore," but I like the music. I don't wanna change it back now or use some I'm
It
keeping
would
it the
just
way
be
it is.
weird also because it feels very us.
Yeah. And honestly, like, even no matter how far we venture, we're always at our heart gonna be horror kids and horror podcast people. So it's always gonna come back. So it'll always
Yeah,
eventually a long way around. But
the long way around. Are we talking about Doctor Who?
right. I did debate that perfectly because I wanted you to jump in there. So thanks.
I look, anytime I hear anyone go, "So it's the long way around," I get very excited because I am immediately like, "Man, how many times has different versions of the Doctor said that thing?"
So many all the time.
So many, because War Doctor's done it, 12 has done it, 11's done it, like,
11 did it. Yep.
yeah, they've all said the thing at
And
least once.
good enough. I think we are positive or optimistic, I guess, enough to say that we'll have more chances to say it in the future. So that's why we're a little happier these past couple of weeks. Uh,
We look, man, not for nothing. Everything that's happened behind the scenes has been kind of a nightmare for everyone, it feels like, in the fandom because we just didn't know what was happening. Good God, we are 2 minutes into this podcast, and it's already being derailed by Doctor Who. That's what the people at home are saying, and yes, I know. But it's because we haven't been doing our Doctor Who show, because we were tired of being frustrated about, like, the up in the airness of where the show was going, so we just didn't do our show because we couldn't focus on the show. We've talked about it. We don't need to go down that road. But the season's been so good. And
has
now signs are starting to point to things being better.
Yes, or at least in some way we might be getting that break that we were going to try to, but RTD was trying to avoid when he first came back or took over. But you know what? That was also a couple years ago. Streaming was different. This landscape was different, so everything gets affected. So at this point, whereas I wanted to have that continue and have that whole thing happen exactly like RTD wanted with the universe and everything else, at this point, I'm just happy that we seemingly are going to get more in a somewhat timely basis. So I mean,
Yeah, that's kind of all I care about at this point. Like,
I,
just give me my Who at this point, damn it. Like,
absolutely. I can't
is
live
that too
without it
bad?
at this point. Come on, I can't live without it. It's been so
No.
much of a part of our lives and everything else. I can't imagine going through like the dark ages like people did back in the day. I just can't imagine like how that would have been.
The only good thing about that right now in, like, our current state of it is, like, at least now, right? If it were to happen, Big Finish is, like, well into doing the stuff that they're doing, so there's always those stories that are there, and for a lot of people, that would be very new. So there'd
Yeah.
be a whole lot of media type stories and stuff that they could get into. There's way more Doctor Who books now than there's ever been. We have way more seasons of the show that you could go back and watch. There's
True.
still ways to get your Doctor Who fix. There's comics that come out monthly still, or weekly, or whatever, however it's done. Every version of the Doctor has their own comics, it seems like now. Like, I that's where I draw the line. Not because I don't love comic books. Obviously, you've been here. You've been to my place. You know I have an entire library of things. But the Doctor Who comics scare the fuck out of me.
It's tough to imagine you saying that about anything,
I
especially
know,
Doctor
but
Who.
there's
But I
just
get it.
so many. Like, compare, and I say that as someone who listens to all these audio dramas.
You listened to them for a while though. When you got into them, were they as like was it a lot of them when you got into it, or how much like
Um, so I got into it roughly just a couple years before the 50th, and I would say that they were farther along, but it was still easier to jump in. And
okay?
I was, like, very specifically only listening to the Eighth Doctor stuff at the time. And right around the time that I jumped in was around when Tom Baker really started doing stuff with them.
Right.
And so then I was listening to 8 and 4, and then every once in a while I'd grab, like, one of the Fifth Doctor ones, or one of the, it just kinda depended on what the story seemed to be that they were telling. Now
Right.
I've gone back and I'll listen to just about any of them, but, like, at the time I was very specifically listening to new Fourth Doctor stories because more Tom Baker is never bad, and I love Paul McGann, and
Right.
so getting so much out of 8 in audio has been just a fucking blessing since, we're never gonna get that on television.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I mean, how you feel towards the comics is always kind of how I felt a little bit towards the Big Finish, because there's always like an overwhelming
I
amount
know.
of I didn't know where to start, and I'm always someone who likes to follow a story from beat to beat, and they kind of go all over the place. So it's kind of hard for me to go. I don't know what I want to do, so I just end up not doing anything. So,
No. Yeah, and it was funny because before we started, you finally were like, "Look, I want to jump in, and I think the 10th Doctor ones are kind of where I wanna do it," and I was like, that's probably the best bet because at least the 10th Doctor ones are pretty much like a through line story.
right, right, which
Um,
definitely helped me out a little bit for
that and
sure.
11, you'd love the 11th Doctor ones because it's basically just a season set between when the Pawns leave and where, Clara shows up,
And
and
of course, 12, I want like a PLD's Doctor as well, so I might try some of those.
well, not just that, I was gonna say the very first story in the season with 11 is a crossover with 12.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. How much is that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's called Regeneration Impossible, and it's 30 minutes, and it is fantastic.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. All right.
Yeah, yeah. See, I go for the hard sell. I know what you like.
You do know what I like. You always know what I like. And what do we
You're like,
like?
I hate that. I hate that I like the things that you like. Man, that being said, it's so funny that we're doing this because they just did a box set, 2 box sets basically of 12 episodes called Hooklight. It
Right.
was a 5th Doctor set that also had 8 in it, and it's very, like, 80s horror with, like, a synth vibe to all of it with some crazy wibbly wobbly, like, fantasy comic booky elements. It
Right.
was super cool, and I was like, "Oh, Paul would love this." Like, it's so
Probably.
good. Paul would love this.
Probably
So
would.
that's the
Probably
one that you would be, like, thrilled about.
Again, see, I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I got the 10th Doctor, I got the 11th Doctor, the one with the crossover, and I got the 5th. Getting a little much, but I probably will go through it at some point, especially if there's a break again, because I don't like the breaks. But
You'll have a
yeah,
whole like, at least a year to just listen to Doctor Who audios.
true enough. Well, we didn't even announce who we are. We are two middle-aged geeks on film, by the way. Just as you know, that's
Oh,
PJ.
hi, I'm PJ.
I'm PLD. Here, the
Wait,
PLD
what? Is
podcast.
that who? Wait, flip that. Nope, just kidding. That is correct.
That's
PJ PLD, that one.
that one. Yeah.
Stitch.
Yes, there you go, Stitch. And we are actually covering a movie. We're doing the special. We usually go in seasons. We do all the franchises, but after we finish covering franchises, when new entries happen, we get to go to the
Because
movie.
nothing's ever fully dead in Hollywood,
Exactly, especially horror movies. I mean, let's be
especially
honest.
horror
That's
movies.
a genre that never says die, and franchises that very rarely say die, unless they get mixed up in rights issues, which happens way too often for us. But
It just keeps happening.
we covered the Final Destination franchise a while ago now. I feel like it was a while ago, or at least it
It was
feels
a
like a while
year
ago.
ago.
About a
It was
year
a year
ago.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have the new installment, Final Destination Bloodlines. So it leads to both something I love to do and I hate to do. I was talking to PJ about this off air as we began here. Most of the franchise stuff we watch and we cover for the show is stuff we've watched before at least once or twice. And like we're going through it, I get to rewatch some of these things. So we kind of know, we have an innate sense of knowledge of it, an in-depth knowledge of it. I don't love covering the new stuff because I go to the theaters, I can't take notes. I've only seen it the one time. I can't reference it. I've said it before many times in the podcast. Usually, when we're covering something, I'm playing the movie in the background, and that kind of like will trigger something for me to talk about. Or something, oh yeah, I remember that. Can't do that with a new movie that's still in the theaters at this point. So it
It's
makes
a
it
good thing
difficult.
that I like to talk.
True, that's very true.
Let me rephrase that. I like to talk when I enjoy something.
No, that's another good point, though. That's true. That's something we should
If
definitely talk about.
it
Luckily, I
Yeah,
think
I
we
was gonna
can
say,
say this now. We're not spoiling our rating at this point, but we can definitely say we were positive about this experience.
uh, I'll say we when it comes to horror movies and you start getting to like the 6th entry in a franchise and the 7th entry in a franchise, hell, sometimes it's the 2nd entry in a franchise.
That's true.
You very quickly are playing with fire, and it's usually law of diminishing returns. I could say that this is probably the best sixth entry in a film horror franchise since Friday the 13th Part 6, which is Jason Lives. Like, you can make an argument for Scream 6. You could make an argument for Annabelle Comes Home, but that feels like a cheat. Um,
Mhm.
this is a pretty good movie,
Yeah.
especially considering it's a movie that's subtitle is Bloodlines. Usually when we get into, like, subtitles like that,
That's usually a bad
not
sign.
great. Yeah, like, not a great sign.
That's a direct to
From the
video.
guys who directed the Kim Possible live action movie for Disney Channel, not a great sign. A cast of a bunch of people who actually sound like nepo babies,
Yeah.
not necessarily a great sign because a lot of them have, like, Basinger is one of the last names.
Right,
Another
right,
one of
right.
is Carmen, and you're like, "Wait a second, are all these children of actors?" No, they're not. They just happen to have those names.
They also
I don't.
look like they look like CW stars from, like, the back of the day. They
Oh,
all
100.
look like they were
Dude, this is 100%. And
right?
let's not kid ourselves. Most of these movies look like that.
That's true, that's true.
Um,
I felt like I knew, like, every actor I saw, I've seen him somewhere, haven't I? And, like, I'm like, "No, not really." That like, Richard Harmon, I know I've seen them somewhere, but, like, I don't know where. Who else was there? The one who played the cousin there, of Richard Harmon's brother. God, what was
yeah.
it? Whoever he was, like, yeah, it
Oh,
looks like
I know where I've seen him now.
okay.
He was actually in a couple of television shows and things over time, and so Bates Motel he was in. He did a couple of episodes of Bates Motel,
Oh,
and
okay.
for me, that would have been the one just because I pretty religiously watched Bates Motel. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love the Psycho films. Those are actually one I would love to cover on here eventually.
I think we could definitely manage that, the
Oh,
of
he
them,
was
right?
Captain Boomerang in The Flash.
Was it really?
Not the movie, obviously, the
The
television show.
the television oh, that is probably where I remember him from.
Yeah.
That is probably where I remember him from, okay. Oh, yeah, he's also
So
in the
weird.
100, which I watched I kinda watched a little bit of that.
It's a little weird that we bring up The Flash now because I am gonna be talking about the CW stuff tomorrow on our Superman
Oh,
Returns podcast.
okay, fair enough, that's right.
It's just very funny to me, like, not a thing that I was thinking about, but, the obvious is Superman Returns deserved a sequel. Well, we finally got one.
There you go, there you go.
I was so mad. So I said that the other day in our fantasy football chat, and someone it was that, and I was talking about Crisis, like the animated movies, and someone was like, "That's the most William Bibiani answer to anything ever. Like you're skirting around stuff." And I was like, "No, it's not. It's just factual. Like
Hmm,
you don't have to like that I'm saying what's right, but like it's factual." And then when I broke down, like this is why doing a live action Crisis movie at this point doesn't really make sense. XYZ, like well, yeah, because how many of the actors can you get back at this point?
right.
Not a lot.
No,
What point is there to do it when you've already used most of them in something? Also, Flash kind of already did it.
right. Yeah,
And I don't even mean Flash the TV show. I mean Flash the movie. They
yeah,
did it as Flashpoint, but I mean, kind of did the same thing.
absolutely, I agree with that as well. Oh,
So anyway, not to go down that rabbit hole of anything. This is also a horror sequel coming 14 years after the last one, like where you were dangerously close to this being like super out of style.
right.
Um, the
I
almost
would I could
honestly,
argue it was gonna be out of style. I don't think, like, anybody I feel like when it was, first, like, announced or talked about, it's kinda like, "Really? They're coming
yeah.
back to it now?"
Well,
It
and
got
it
built over
kicked around
time.
for like a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
Because remember, there was an entire version of this that had to do with first responders at one point
I
that
do
they
remember
didn't end
that.
up doing.
Mhm.
Um, but the ultimately good thing about this is they did do it in time for Tony Todd to get
Oh,
one
thank
last
goodness.
scene in, as Bloodworth. And, like, ultimately, and most importantly, I think that's why I'm glad that this movie exists, but it also helps that the movie itself is good. It's just nice because I remember when this version of the movie was finally announced, and they were like, John Watts of the Spider-Man trilogy, MCU fame was the guy
Oh,
who did
thank
the
you,
story.
Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, what a weird thing for him. But we also have to remember he directed Clown, he directed Cop Car. Like, he came from a world where he was doing like more grounded and or like horror-y, thrillery type things with ensembles. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
then they were like, yeah, and it's kind of like a Bloodworth origin. And I was like it was one of those play with fire things.
Right, and I gotta say that actually misled me. I don't know if it misled you as much, and I understand why it didn't happen. Obviously, if you don't know, and you probably do know this anyway, but just in case you don't know, Tony Todd was actually very sick, and he
Yes.
passed away before this came out. He passed away. I don't remember exactly when he passed away at this point,
It
but it
was
was like
back in November. I know
November.
it
Right?
was in
Okay.
November. Yeah.
Either way, so but I remember when it first was announced, I kind of felt like they were implying that he was going to be like the lead almost, like he was gonna be his movie. We're finally getting a Tony Todd Bloodlines movie.
Well,
I don't know
because
if that
that's
was
kind
ever
of
the
what
case.
that was the production lines of everything, and
Right.
I'm wondering how much of that
Was the intention
changed.
initial? Yeah, was that intentionally
Yes.
or that the intention initially, but then like Tony said he basically couldn't do that. Because he ends up having one scene. And I
Yeah.
mean, it was a hell of a scene. It was a great scene, but I was just surprised, like, oh, that's all we're getting from him, huh? Okay. I mean, it's part and parcel with his appearances throughout the series. He's never
Yeah.
exactly he doesn't have you add up all the minutes together, it's barely like probably 20 minutes.
Yeah,
You know,
not
the
even.
entire if that. So it does come into play, but at the same, it just felt like we're gonna get more from him. But I gotta
But
say, I'll throw it out there now, man. Let's just say it. What is awesome about this is I watched this. He comes into play, and man, he has a last like line of dialogue that I was like almost tearing up for in the theaters. And then I found out later on more information that made me made me break down.
right.
His last line of dialogue was, "I intend to enjoy the time I have left, and I suggest you do the same. Life is precious. Enjoy every single second. You never know when. Good luck." And I'm not giving the delivery justice because the delivery was like spot on. But then we found out through an interview with the producers and the director, I think the director, they actually said that they had dialogue written at that point and they threw it all away. And they basically said, "Tony, I want you to say goodbye to your fans. So
Yeah.
take the mic and let him just say what he wanted to say." And that's like what Tony Todd came up with. And it fits the movie perfectly for what they're doing.
And I feel like the actors actually in that moment 100% lean into it
Knew the role,
because
yeah.
it's clear that they're also kind of like taken aback by what he says.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I agree.
And I really like that because it makes it feel that much more real.
Yeah. It
Um,
I mean, it
yeah,
doesn't help that it was tough because obviously his sickness, he was definitely a lot, like, frailer, thinner,
you
and
could
Tony
see
Todd was
it.
always a big guy. He was like a big, powerful presence back in The Rock, back in the like, he
Well,
was
dude, even the
Crow.
indie game.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Big, tough guy. And you see him like very frail, very when you're like, and it felt sad. It felt, but at the same time, it felt a little joyous that he was able to do it and he was able to get that goodbye in a way. You don't get to do that often in artist world. Like sometimes you just die while you're making your movie and that's it. He got a chance, knowing the end was coming, to have this like nice, wonderful like tribute and like goodbye to the fans, which was it was in another movie. It could have been even worse. It could have been like that was the highlight. And that's the only reason to watch it. But he also gets to end in a good movie, which is the best part about it for me.
Yeah, 100%, and I really appreciate because when Bloodlines was coming through and, like, Todd hid how sick he was. No
Yeah,
one like, fans really weren't aware of what was going on, but it's very much one of those things in Hollywood, everyone kinda is aware of other
right.
things, like this, and I guess he actually also went to the filmmakers and was like, "Do not write me out. Like, please let me have one scene as well." So
Right.
I'm also very grateful that not only did they let him do it the way they wanted, which was letting him do it his own way, but they also allowed him to be there because
Right.
they could have just as easily said, "No, it's too much of a liability."
Yeah, that's a good call. And honestly speaking, I feel it's weird to say. What I said before, he had like 20 minutes of screen time. He's not like, even though we associate him with the franchise, he's not like, it's not like Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, right? It's not like he isn't the main character or the monster or anything else. He's just this guy that
Right.
kind of pops up. He is known for the series because he's probably the most well-known actor of the bunch. He's been in a bunch of things and everything else. Usually these films are anchored by, like I said before, I don't mean this denigrating style, but it's a lot of like CW actors, TV actors who
Right.
are making their debuts or something like that, which is fine. But he is like
These are
that,
launching pad films a lot of the
right?
time, 100%.
And he is a kind of a legendary icon, especially in the horror field for Candyman, all things like that nature. And he just kind of lends his gravitas, his presence to the films. So you don't necessarily need a Tony Todd in this film, and
But it sure helps.
but having him is, I think, if you if they had this film without him and he was alive, then that would have been like that would have been awful, and I would have hated, I would have
Yeah.
hated it.
Well, it's funny because I mean, here's the thing, right? How many times has Tony Todd legitimately just popped up in a thing?
Yeah.
Uh, in Hellfest, they leaned on the fact that he was in it, and he had an entire single scene in that movie too.
Yep.
Like, but he was a huge part of the selling point of it because they knew that Tony Todd put butts in seats. That was the most shocking thing about Candyman, honestly, was that they actually had the restraint
Yeah.
to like not put him in it until the very end of the film.
Right. Yeah.
Because how do you make a Candyman film without Tony Todd? Well, they did it, and you didn't because you still managed to get the man in, but you waited till the end. And you know what? That's good restraint.
It is. Absolutely.
But I'm happy that he had this scene, and it's interesting because again, the movie actually is very much about Bloodworth in some capacity. It is his origin film in some
It is.
capacity. And
No, we
it's
never
done
knew
in a
who he
really
was in the
tasteful way.
series. In the series, we never
Right.
knew who he was. He just kind of pops up. There was like theories and fan theories that
Well, everyone thought he was dead.
dead. Right. He
Yeah.
was dead. He was dead because he came out, or he was Death's helper or something like that. Because he always kind of knew, had a lot of knowledge of what was going on. People were like, well, how does he know all this stuff if he's not supernatural? Well, we get our answer, and it's a good one. It's a very good one. It's a little predictable, I will say. Like
Sure, but
once it gets going, like once it starts, it's a little predictable. You're kind of like, okay, because you see, like we open up. We talk about now. We have a great premonition. These films open up. If you don't know, you should know this by now. They open up with premonition, lots of death flying around, and then we get to figure out a way to stop it, and then death comes back and kills you all, like in order. So we have a great premonition that starts this film. It's probably one of the better ones. I don't know if we could rank them, but this is amongst
it's straight up the best premonition in the entire franchise because here's why. Stay with me here.
Stay with you a little bit.
The reason it's the best, one, it's the most interesting. It sets up so much. But the reason it's the best is because it doesn't happen to the person having the premonition in the film.
Okay.
And
Okay. I will. Let me jump in and say I get what you're saying. So I agree with you in that aspect. I still think if you're just talking specifically about the premonitions themselves. The log ones did a log. The one from 2 has kind of done for log trucks what Jaws did for sharks in water. It's kind of one of those
well,
things. Like
you're not wrong, and this
it's
movie
that kind of
leans on
iconic.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of iconicness. I don't know if this is going to get that kind of iconicness, but that is a point I was going to bring up as well, is that it is a clever thing to start because here we are, and the whole film is full of things like this where it knows its franchise, it knows its fan base, and it leads you by the nose to go, we know what you expect, so we are going to twist it around and turn it around just a little bit. It's going to be familiar. You're not going to like hate it, but you're going to get there, and it's going to be a little different than you expect. And that's what the first formation does spot on. You're like, oh,
I also think, to your point, I do think that this movie is going to do for pennies what log trucks became for an entire generation.
Well,
Because
see about
that the fact that that remains a thing the entire film and is basically the inciting incident is the most batshit crazy thing I've ever seen anyone do, and I have to credit them for doing it because that is genius.
Yeah.
It's also the first time I was like actively rooting for a child to die in a movie, and I couldn't tell you how long. And I kind of wish that I had seen him die again. Like
yeah.
After we see him die, and then we know that death has been hunting these people down. I kind of wish I'd seen that fucker die again.
That's a sequel. That's what
Well, no, because he's already dead. They were the last family.
Yeah, but they can go back. That's
I
that's
guess
the
that's
beautiful
true.
thing about this way they ended up doing it, doing the whole Bloodlines. That's the name of the film. They save like instead of like the handful of people they save in all these Final Destination movies, in this one they save like 100 people, and then the bloodlines go throughout. Like, so we have like thousands of people pretty much overall when it comes down to it, or at least close to 1,000. So
Right, and
now
we're
in the end,
focused on one family.
we focus on one family through line, and that's the end. Now, if we ever wanted to do whatever, they could do like the Doctor Who kind of thing, going back to Doctor Who, they could pick any of those bloodlines and see what we could have
Yeah.
movies about any of those. So that could totally be the sequel. But you're
Well,
right. When that piano hit that fucker, I was sitting cheering. I was standing up and
right.
cheering how about that.
Oh, it was
That
so good. And it's interesting because it actually kind of expands the lore of the franchise because were all those kids throughout this franchise, were some of them related to people who survived? Like, it does ask that question.
does. It's absolutely, and I believe it. I believe it was. I almost feel like this was like the first. This feels like it was might have been the first of the kind of events that happened. Like, I
Correct.
feel like this was like the actual
The
keystone
inciting incident.
inciting incident, because this is the first time we've had, like you said, somebody having a permit, like a permission about someone in the past. It wasn't involving them. That
Right.
was such a strong thing that I kind of got to the point where we're going to bring it back this way. So I agree. I think all of them are somehow probably, and that's the beauty of it. Like, that's the beauty of what they decided to do, is by going back and creating this bloodline idea, you expand on a lore successfully. Uh,
Mhm.
Early, and it makes sense. And we're in the sixth film when they're doing that. It's like you don't usually get new lore that makes sense. Usually, it's at this point we are confusing lore. We are throwing lore out the window and trying to reinvent the
Right.
wheel. And this is just taking what we know and making it better, and making it more. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's what makes it special, honestly, because it's the rare horror legacy sequel that instead of trying to toss everything out, goes, "You know what, man? Nah, we're gonna lean on it."
right,
And I really, really appreciate that because, we've covered a lot of franchises on here. We've
right,
talked a lot about a lot of different horror films that just go for the throat of tossing stuff out and trying to start new because they don't want to try to tie things together. This is way more interesting
yeah,
because you're actually leaning in on everything that's happened and making it a point that no, it mattered. And
right.
now we can continue to move forward.
Absolutely. And part and parcel with that is what I kind of alluded to before. What I love what these creators did, I read an interview afterwards, and then they backed up my what I was saying, and is that they know exactly the fan base and what they expect from a Final Destination movie, right? So they give you what you want, but they don't necessarily give it to you in the order you need it to be in, so it's predictable. Like, they'll
Right.
do stuff like they will lead you along the path and show you something, and because we are who we are, we're looking at things and saying, "Oh, I see that." That glass fell into the cup. They're gonna drink it, and then that's gonna be happens. And they have like these like near misses, like it's like, oh, it didn't
They
happen.
toy with the audience hardcore.
Toy. It's like toy, like it's these red herrings, so that when it actually does happen, we actually are surprised. Like, oh, there it is. Now it's happening. So it's like it's getting us into it. And they actually did the same thing with we talked about the kid's death. They actually had the kid almost die like once or twice before he
Mhm.
actually does die. It's almost like, oh, damn it. Oh, and then when it does happen, fuck yeah.
Well, and I gotta say,
Yeah.
man, like the Iris character, Gabriel Rose plays the matriarch of the family. Breck Bessinger plays her in the past during the like initial
Right.
premonition when she sees everything that's gonna happen.
Right.
The thing I love is that she's also a surrogate for the audience
Uh-huh.
because in the way that they handle it, she's the audience. She's looking at everything and seeing how it can kill her. And so you have this one character who is locked herself away in a cabin where she will never die. That
Right.
Bloodworth helped her build.
Yeah, which was a great addition to that as well. And that was the one, like I said, predictable part too. And unfortunately, it's not for a good reason, I don't think. But we see in the beginning, there's a she's going through that's the sky view, whatever. She's seeing all these people, and she sees this young African American kid. And like once I saw that and the premonition ended, I'm kind of like, that was Tony Todd as a kid, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
we don't. He was the old. It's like it's one of those things. It's the only African American man we saw in there. He's in there. That's what's going to happen, isn't it? And it's unfortunate that that's the case. Like that kind of.
Yeah, but I feel like they're winking at us. They know we know. you know?
Could be the case. That could be what it is too, as well. I mean, it's kind of a shame that that's the way it has to be, but it is the way it is, unfortunately. So it made sense, but didn't ruin anything for me. In fact, I kind of liked it because as soon as I said it in my head, I'm like, that's gonna be him, and I was like waiting for it to be proven. And then once it was, it's kind of like, yeah, see, yeah, good,
Yeah.
okay, give it to me more.
And I gotta say, man, they really do the thing that I love with this franchise, which is a lot of things around them foreshadowing the events, whether it's signs that say danger ahead,
Yep.
whether it's every usage of a song, which is amazing. The use of raindrops keep falling on my head
Oh my
as the dead
god,
bodies start hitting the ground off of during the premonition. I was cackling. I thought that
so
was
good.
hysterical.
It was fun. It was fun. Absolutely. I
And
love that.
that's what I'm gonna say. Here's the thing about this movie. It's fun. Like, it's legitimately so much fun. I actually almost feel bad that The Monkey came out so much earlier in the year because they actually kind of have a very similar story and beat as far as, like,
Yeah.
familial bloodlines being terrorized by an unseen force and people dying in, like, really absurd ways.
Right. You're not
But,
wrong. You're
you
not
know,
wrong.
man, no, I know it was weird. I realized that after and I was all, "Wow, they're, like, eerily similar."
It's a fun double feature, I guess, in a way, huh?
Uh-huh. A great double feature, in fact, like, maybe the best that you could ask for.
Right.
But I really don't care because at the end of the day, I had so much fun, and the thing is this movie's also good, just like The Monkey. Like, it's actually good, and I think the thing that really sets this apart from all the other ones, and this is not, like, to disrespect the other casts or anything like that, but I think by narrowing the cast down to a family unit, like, not strangers, not a friend group, but, like, a family unit, and they're all trying to survive this together made it such a different feel than all the others.
Yeah.
Because, like, friend groups are what it is, and, like, we all have found family and all that, but, like, having one person who starts to see all the craziness that the grandmother was basically ostracized from this family over, and being like, "No, no, she's right, and now I'm trying to protect all of us," is so wild and so interesting, and it actually also leads to, like, you thinking a certain thing is gonna happen, then it doesn't because,
Right.
she figures out the family tree and how death is gonna go down the family tree from oldest to youngest, and it's like, "Okay, well, this cousin is next," only for it to pass him and for him to find out he is not his father's son.
Not just pass him, though. Not just pass him. He actually goes through a normal Final Destination kill sequence. The whole Rube
Yes.
Goldberg sequence that is the franchise is famous for. It's the one, you see now it's the one from the first trailer that we all said that's gonna be like that might be the opening of the movie or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
the tattoo parlor
tattoo
sequence.
parlor. That there was no way he was gonna survive that, and yet he's in the next scene, is walking. He starts walking in the screen. You're like, wait, what? What just
Yeah,
happened here? We just had a Final Destination death, and you just walked away from it. How is that even possible? And
he
so
wore a leather jacket, man.
he wore a leather jacket. But that's what makes it so good is that again, the creators know what you expect. They're giving you what you want. That Final Destination sequence with a gnarly would have been death, and it turns it on its head and goes nope. And so that almost feels like at that point it feels like this is too weird and too out there. But then it gives you the explanation. You're like, you find out that the mom had an affair. He wasn't actually part of the bloodline. Oh, now it makes sense. That's
And Eric
clever.
Yeah, it's really clever, and Eric is a fantastic character, one of the best horror characters we've had in a long time, and
Yes.
I also love, though, that after that happens, you're pretty much like, "Oh, he's not gonna die," and then he really does, and you're so disarmed by it happening because you're like, "Oh, death will leave him alone," only for it to not, and it's, like, arguably one of the most insane
Gruesome.
deaths in the entire franchise.
Yeah, the MRI death. Oh my god, when he gets like cracked into it's so
Well, and he gets
terrifyingly
pulled in by his
pulled in.
fucking cock ring.
Yeah, the cock. You see the
Oh,
cocker come out of his pit, you're like, "Oh my." Because the funny thing is that I love the fact that even though it probably wouldn't happen in real life, they all would have gone at the same time, right? But
right.
like you see it like what it's like no tongue,
The
nose,
ears.
ears, nipples, also, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, you're like, "Oh shit!" As every guy in my audience was like, "Oh shit!"
Oh, dude,
Boba
I
comes
gotta
back.
say, every one of the kills in this
It's
is
good.
beyond inventive in the best way. They don't really go out of their way to recreate anything.
No, it's all
The ending
good.
kinda does, but,
Oh
like,
yeah, a
not
little
in
bit.
a bad way, in
Right,
a
right,
really cheeky sort of way.
right, right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. In a very good cheeky kind of way.
yeah, like, this one really leans in on how can we push the audience because they know that the hardcore fans have seen all these movies a million times.
Right.
So we need to be able to surprise them, but we also need to have new fans find this franchise and fall in love with it by being over the top and inventive in a way that is going to be memorable. And they do that in spades, like across the board, every single one of the kills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a little goofy, they're a little over the top, but that's exactly what you need and expect for the friend. Like, and the effects themselves are wonderful. Like, I didn't
Mhm.
like sense anything. I thought the effects were just like they're some great kills. The gore was just about right. Doesn't shy away from it from anything. It's really super well done, and it just it makes you. It totally arrests you in there. It gets you into the film and make you waiting for it, and it delivers every single time. There's not one time I kind of was like, "Oh, that's it, huh?" It was nope, it just went
No.
above and beyond every single time. I love the fact we just mentioned, like, Harm, like, Eric, he's one of the great characters, right? We said that already. One of the great characters of the story, and so when he death passes him by, you expect him to live, not only because death passed him by, but because he is probably so fun and so good. He's that guy that will live at the end because you like him, and then he doesn't. And why? Because you mess with death and death messes back, and like they give you the exact reason and say
Yeah.
what's this, like they tell you flat out this is what happens. And they told you before it happened and after. And it's like, yeah, they
And
let us
it's
know. They
they
let us
did
know.
and especially because he's the one who wants to toy with death so much because he's
Right,
gonna try to kill his brother so that his brother will get brought back to life and end the whole thing,
right, right, right.
and
The
it's
Kimberly
brilliant.
Corman, I think it is, right? It's Kimberly
Yeah,
the pronunciation
from
too.
Final Destination 2, yeah.
Right.
Which
That's
was again, what a great, like, little things throughout. Even when they're showing Iris's, big death book where she's been keeping notes, there's all sorts of, like, it shows the plane, it
right,
shows the log trucks, like, you start to see a lot of that throughout the movie,
right.
of little nods back to the other films,
It's good
and I really
nostalgia.
appreciated that.
Yeah, it's good nostalgia. As fans of the franchise, like there's a war on nostalgia. I feel like recently, like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, too much nostalgia," and I understand that there can be too much nostalgia thrown in,
Sure.
but when it's done correctly, like this was, when it's subtle enough that it actually feeds the story, it's something to be shooting for because it,
Yeah,
it
100%.
rewards your longtime fans and everything else, and it doesn't like hurt like anybody else who hadn't seen the movies. They're not like thinking they missed anything and like, so
Yeah.
they go back like, "Oh, we saw that in the book. Okay, cool, cool."
Yeah, it's the right type of fan service in
Right,
which you can do a thing and it plays back to what you know, but without overstepping the story and making it the focal point. Like, it's just more like, "Hey, that's fun," and then you keep moving, right?
right, right.
It's the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade when he looks at the Ark of the Covenant and he sees it on the wall and he goes, "Oh, yeah, it's the Ark of the Covenant." She goes, "Are you sure?"
Pretty
"Pretty
sure,
sure."
pretty
Like,
sure.
yeah. Hell, Dial of Destiny did that really well too. 38 minutes in, clock it. Because the thing with the snakes, but it
Yes,
was the eels, and
right.
then them calling them water snakes and him getting all freaked out by it. Just great fan service.
Did you see me looking at the clock when you said Last
Uh-huh.
Crusade? I was like,
That
"No, not calling it, not calling it, not calling it."
for those who don't know, that it's basically a bit at this point that I will find a way to tie Dial of Destiny into any conversation that we have.
PJ is probably the biggest fan of Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny that I've ever met in my life, and I love him. I love him for it. And I actually, not that I'm not a fan. We both stand Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. You can find that review on our channel or on our feed or whatever because we did a very in-depth review of that. We both loved it.
I
But
have it tattooed on my leg.
I don't. That's where I'm saying PJ is the biggest fan that I know of for sure. Uh,
Let's just call it what it is. I got it tattooed on my body. It's
uh,
fine.
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Um, but no, exactly. It really does a great job with that. I also want to throw out there a couple different things. It kind of reminded me a little bit. Did their mother, Stephanie's mother, remind you of Jamie Lee Curtis of
100%.
in the Halloween trilogy. The
It
different
definitely felt like a nod to that, and it almost felt like it was making fun of it. Um,
a little bit, right? That's I
and
felt
I
like.
kind of respect the shit out of that because, as you know, and again, you can, if you're first time here and you're listening to us, we have covered all the Halloween films. I have talked in depth about my feelings on the use of Jamie Lee Curtis in the Halloween films, especially the trilogy, the
Right.
new trilogy.
David Robert Green.
I kind of feel like it's primed to make fun of that in some
Yeah.
capacity and like lean on that because in this case, it feels a lot more earned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because especially because you see that she has seen how this is all playing out.
Right.
Like, it's very different,
Right.
and I really appreciated that. I thought that was really fun, and I gotta say, man, I like that character a lot.
Yeah.
Gabriel Rose does a hell of a lot with her, like, 10 minutes of screen time.
I agree. I felt like I wanted like I was expecting it to be somebody that I knew, like I thought it was one of those character actor moments, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
didn't. I'm
sure.
like, but it felt like afterwards, it still felt like it. That's how the kind of the gravitas that she gave to the sequence.
Yeah.
Really, I believed her 100%. She was all in on it, and she just ate up that stage or the screen for like the 10 minutes again, like you said, she was in there for.
I
Um,
gotta say,
a
I
lot of great
really
performances,
appreciate.
honestly. Honestly,
Yeah,
I've heard
and I
a
was
lot
gonna
of great
say,
performances.
to your point, like, I kinda waited for it to be someone I knew because I actually went into this as blind as possible. I really didn't watch much of the like, unless I saw the trailer in theaters, I really didn't go out of my way to watch anything. I just kinda wanted to let it
Right.
happen.
Right.
Um, I really appreciate their restraint to not have the characters be someone we also knew. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm
Agreed.
saying? Like, in some capacity, I was afraid that they would find a way to tie some of the other characters in, and they don't. And I really appreciate that. Like,
Yeah,
they did it again.
they name drop Kimberly Corman or whatever, so I was like,
Yeah,
I was expecting even more. I was expecting like, "Oh, we're gonna get who survived? We're gonna find one of the
right.
survivors to talk to us about it and everything." So they did that, and they did it before in a way, and it would have felt cheap in a way. It would have felt cheap, and I'm
Exactly.
glad they didn't go there. I'm glad they did the name drop. I thought it was a nice way to tie it in without having
Just
to
like the
actually
book.
dig it down. Right, exactly. Just the book was perfectly done that way. We don't because we didn't need any more to be stuffed into the film at that point. It was already kind of like at its point where like it was just long enough to do the story well. But if it had more in it, it might have started feeling a little bloated.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that they did a really nice job ultimately, kind of tying everything together the way that they did.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
it really works. And I really appreciate that all the characters feel fleshed out in their own way. And Bloodworth being the only like legacy character makes the most sense at that point.
100%.
Um, I almost wonder who, if any, legacy character it would have been had they decided to, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, it might have been Kimberly. I mean, they had mentioned hers. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the one they went with because Final Destination 2, I think, is the one. If
It's
I
the
had a
most popular, I
It's the
feel
most
like.
popular one. Yeah, because the log is that's the one that's the most iconic and most remembered scene of all the Final Destination movies.
Right.
So they bring her in as like a memory of that per se. Everybody else, I feel like, well, most of them, there's a lot of death in there anyway. You're not going to bring anybody back from the Final Destination, which everybody
Well,
forgets about anyway.
I was
Um,
gonna the truth is that also I feel like most of the cast don't survive.
right,
Like, that's the point ultimately, because at the end of every one of these movies in some capacity, including this one,
right,
death catches up with most of them at the end,
yeah, yeah, they really
right?
do. I'm trying to remember, like, and this is me being a bad, like, we did cover these films a year ago. Ali Larter's character, Clear, does she actually die in one of them?
She dies in the second one. They
She does
find
die in the
because
second
she
one, right?
remember she finally leaves and it's a whole
Right,
thing.
right, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so that's why I was kinda I couldn't remember if I remember that she was out of there. I didn't remember if she had died or not. Because if she had died, that would have been the one I probably think they would have gone back to, potentially.
Yeah.
Another person they possibly could have gone back to, but yeah, she unfortunately, she passed, so,
That
um
it's so funny because 'cause I'm, like, scrolling through and it's, like, characters alive, other characters dead, other characters dead. Like,
mm,
the Thomas Burt character from Final Destination 3, he's apparently still alive, but, like, almost all of them deceased.
right, right, yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I will say that speaking of legacy characters, bringing back up, I keep going back to Tony Todd. I love, but I can't. How can I not? Um, I do love. We kind of touched on it before. Bloodwar's origin, where everybody thought he was Death, and instead we find out that the reason why he knows so many things is because he was there in the beginning for that inciting incident, and he's been working with the initiator there the first whole all the way through as well, even helping her build the cabin and everything else. And that's where it comes into play. It makes such sense because everybody wanted him, everybody thought he was Death, and like I feel like almost any other answer would have been cheap, but they gave you an answer that not only made sense but worked and felt right. Like
Mhm.
it felt right. So we didn't need necessarily a supernatural entity. Like the supernatural entity Death being like just kind of this amorphous thing actually works better for the film. So if you gave it a name and a face, it would have felt a little, I don't know, like they could have focused on that more. The best part about the fear in this is that you can't focus on a villain because it's all around you. It's like the
Mhm.
whole world is it, and that's what makes it kind of oppressive and scary in a way. Giving it a face and name, it makes it feel a little bit less scary. So you're giving him this character where he does know almost everything because he's been through almost everything and he's still around. Damn, that just felt right and felt good.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, it really recontextualizes all those sequences in the other movies where he's talking to the cast members
Yeah.
because it really does make you go, man, he's aware because he's survived one of these and he's helping someone else and knows that this is continuing to happen around them. And yet he can't help but like look away.
Right. Because he
And
knows it's gonna happen, but he can't really get involved to that like degree.
yeah,
Uh,
I love it, honestly. I think it's
mm.
so fascinating.
I just for many reasons I wish that he was still around, and that would be because I would love to see that explored a little bit further on down the line. We could have had him come back even can do more stuff like that. It could have been just I mean, rest in peace, man. I love Tony Todd.
I do
Maybe I just
too.
want Tony Todd and more. Yeah, that's all I want. Just more Tony Todd.
I'm always gonna be sad that we didn't get, like, but again, I guess it's also the less is more, right? Because how many
Yeah.
times have we seen side characters become lead characters and it doesn't always work or
Yeah.
whatever?
Usually
Like,
doesn't, honestly.
right, because they're better off being the characters that they are,
Right.
like, in their capacity. So it's
Because
all
we don't really know them. We only know like bits and pieces of them. And when they become a lead character, all of a sudden we have to know more. And we get and the pieces that we get filled in are ones that we don't agree that that's the character. Like because we kind of fill in the gaps ourselves, or
sure.
we purposefully don't fill in the gaps. So then when those gaps are filled, it definitively makes it different than how we imagine it. And all of a sudden, and different is almost never better. It's
I
usually
actually wouldn't hate if they decided to do so because the opening of this movie is such a, like, 60s retro throwback type of thing.
right.
If they decided to do, like, a '70s set one with Tony Todd's Bloodworth character, and you
Mhm.
had another actor playing him, but going through, like, him trying to survive when death decides to come after him would be fascinating.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's the one way you could do it with where you, like, acknowledge Tony Todd's legacy to the franchise and not really step on it while allowing that character to continue.
Although, could they? Because, like, the idea that they set now is that he was one of the last ones to die, which is why they have to go through everything else first before they get to him.
Sure, but it inherently becomes one of the, problems with prequels, right?
Right. Right,
But you
absolutely.
could still have fun with it in some capacity
Mm,
also, because
yeah,
it could also be, like, him trying to save people,
right. Maybe he thinks
and
that's coming for him, but it's not coming for him, it's only coming for somebody else, and he could have a realization that the person he is with is a descendant of
yeah,
said
right,
person that he knew or whatever kind of thing in a way.
something like that.
So you could make it you definitely could still make it work in a way because
Yeah,
he would have
you
to be
have
more
to
creative,
massage the lore, but, like, there's definitely a way to do it,
right?
and there's a lot of good actors who could play that part and do it well.
Right.
Um, so, if they wanted to, they could, but again, you also run the risk of part of the reason we like the Bloodworth character is because of the limited screen time and for it
Mysteriousness of
being
him.
Tony Todd.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, again, because we like the mysteriousness of it and Tony Todd, and now the solved mystery is great, and we loved the answers. But like now, going more than that feels like it would venture into that terrain I was talking about before, where it's like, well, now we're going a little bit filling in too many gaps and too many
Right,
things that we don't want to
exactly.
fill in. And it's like let it go, let it stay mysterious a little bit. But I will say
Again,
also
not that
part
it
of the
wouldn't be
problem is
fun.
no, not the word exactly. It could be fun. We have all these characters in here, and like unlike a lot of franchises, we don't have a final girl, final guy because they all go, which of course means Final Destination 7, if it does happen now, unless it's like a prequel of some kind, all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, so now what are we doing? Like it
It
does
just
go
becomes
that way.
someone new has a premonition,
Yeah.
and, the cycle starts all over again
So
in
it's
some
more
capacity.
detached. It's more
Yeah,
detached. It's thing.
because
And
it's
could be
very it could be done right, and look, this movie made over $100 million its opening weekend worldwide. A 7th movie is, like,
gonna be
going to
greenlit
be announced
any
tomorrow
day.
morning at this
Right.
point.
Exactly.
Like, WB isn't gonna sit on the sidelines, "Oh, this is so random." How good did it feel to see the old school New Line Cinema logo at
Oh,
the opening of the film? And
so
that was
good.
such a weird thing, but, like, I didn't realize how long it had been since I had seen it
Right.
and heard that music.
Same. Same.
Oh
I
my
was like,
gosh,
oh,
dude.
good. It's a throwback because I mean the films are from the start in the 2000s. It is like the first one was in 2000, so
Yeah.
it's definitely a throwback to that. And it's like, oh, it feels so right. It feels like we're home in this franchise again.
It
Yeah,
it immediately, like, it disarmed me enough that I went into the movie going, "Oh, man, I can't wait to see how they're gonna survive this."
yeah,
I
we're
was
in
just
South
so, like
Park,
it
right?
lulled me into a safe sense of security that was not actually safe.
That's true. I mean, it is kind of funny to think about it. It's like Disney when they got Star Wars. All of a sudden, we didn't open up the 20th Century Fox fanfare for the first time, and that kind of felt weird in
Right.
a way. So, like, it's like do having not had that, and then all of a sudden, like, it'd be like Episode 10 coming out next year. We all of a sudden they just throw the Fox 20th Century Fox. I mean, they do own 20th Century Fox. They could do that if they wanted to, kind of thing.
They
They throw
could
it in
now if
front of
they
it.
really wanted.
They throw it back in, but it would kind of feel like I almost feel like that would be that kind of same thing. We go, oh, that feels right again. It feels kind of
Yeah.
nice again in a way.
Yeah, that I'll say, weirdly, that my biggest detraction of Dial of Destiny is not having the Paramount logo at the beginning and having the Disney castle instead. It
Yeah,
feels strange.
it does. It does.
Uh, but I digress. I have to say, and we've kind of talked around it a little bit, but I really, really think that this cast sells the movie in the right way.
Yeah.
And I really have to credit Caitlin Sanawana, who I've never seen. She's a very new actress. Like, I was looking into it. She really doesn't have a bigger filmography or anything.
Speaking of The Flash, she was actually in the 8th season of The Flash.
Yeah,
I was surprised. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I kind of vaguely remember her in that in X. I was by the end of The Flash, I wasn't watching as closely as I had been. That was one of the things I got. I was like, "Oh, sweet, so that's what it is." She was, Lydia Sanchez in the 8th season of The Flash.
yeah. And so, like, it was one of the few things that I knew she did. But I gotta say, man, pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. No, a lot of
She's
characters
really
are great.
good. She's
Yeah.
really good, and she anchors the film because I do like that she's being terrorized by all this.
Right.
I like that she's having night terrors of this entire event, and I think that that really creates an air of mystery and confusion for the character that is so fascinating, and I love that that terror is basically destroying her life.
I also like the fact that, like, she gets like really obsessed with it, obviously for the right reasons, obviously at this point. But because we have that backstory of her grandmother, it's so easy to see why the family dismisses it and gets like pissed off at her in a way. It's like, oh, it sucks because it's one of those things like as the audience who is watching this, we know she's right. We know what she's saying is true. But at the same time, we understand why the characters in the story do not or will don't agree with her or think she's crazy because we have that laid storyline. And that works well for it as well. I will also point out that I love the fact that the older cast members, like the parents and the uncle and the father, also just do a great job portraying their roles well. And it sounds like a backhanded compliment, but competence from those characters doesn't always happen. A lot of times
No,
there have been times
100%.
we'll argue about the parents in the movie being, oh, they're just being the dumb parents who aren't believing the kids or anything else or not. But these are like real, genuine people, and you understand everything they're saying. Like, even like the uncle, we get that slow burn where we learn like she asks her father about her grandmother, and he gets a little like prickly about it. Like, well, he's like, you know what? Don't ask your uncle about her. Of course, what's the next thing she does? She asks her uncle about him. In a way, like in another horror movie, we would have been treated to an uncle who just immediately gets mean or shuts it down and gets mad really quickly. And it's not necessarily the way it should be. And this character, the uncle in this character, all of a sudden he remains positive. He still remains like a supportive uncle family member, even though you do see the scene of like him not wanting to talk about the horror in his life, the past trauma in his life, as he does eventually bring it out. I just loved how they developed those characters very well. And actually, also made it better when like he does go. When he gets killed, he felt really bad. Those a character you really felt bad for. You didn't want to see him go.
No, and I think that's the thing about all of these cast members. Like, I actually liked all of them. Yeah, they might be kind of vapid in some capacity, but I felt for them because none of them asked for this, right? It's
Right.
such a different version of this story, and it also puts, like, a familial trauma
Right.
kind of front and center to the story in a way that we've never seen, and I
Right.
really appreciate that because the damage it did to the generations of this family,
Yeah.
not just by killing them one by one, but, like, it tore the grandmother away,
Yeah.
and then it tore her mother away because you have these people who became so obsessed with trying to protect everyone that they ultimately either pushed the others away or they ran away because they thought that they'd end up being more dangerous for them.
Right.
And what does that do to people? And that pushes on this idea that once Stephanie goes to college, she starts ignoring her family and it upsets her cousins, it upsets her brother. Like there's so much to it that adds so much more of an air of like drama
Yeah.
and it makes it feel real, and I really appreciate that. This is a thing that we don't see in a lot of these movies anymore, and again, this is the 6th film in a franchise called with the subtitle Bloodlines. Everything in my everything in me, when I hear that, tells me this should be terrible, and yet every
Actually,
move.
it's a joke. It's a joke,
Right.
especially in the horror franchise. If you hit Bloodlines in your subtitle,
Or you
it's
go to
going to be
space.
awful. That or space. That's right. Although I think Jason X still bucks that trend.
Well, I
Because
agree with that, but that's beside the point. What do we wanna talk about Amityville in space? Because that's a real thing.
that's right. We got like Bloodline. We had like Hellraiser, had Bloodline, Wrong Turn 5, Pet Cemetery, like even
I
like
think Tremors even.
Tremors 5
Yeah.
is Bloodlines, and that was the prequel one, right? I think, right? Am I
No,
wrong on
that's
that?
the 4th one. That's, The Legend Begins.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that introduces Jamie Kennedy to the
Right.
franchise.
Oh, okay. Well, see, well, Tremors, I guess, avoided it a little bit.
Yeah, well, look,
I do
and
like that
we
one.
as you know, I'm a basic bitch when it comes to Tremors.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much always gonna give Tremors a pass.
I got that. I agree with that. Not very. There's like not actually. I was looking at Reddit. There's a Reddit like, has there ever been a sequel with Bloodlines in the title ever been good? And it's like, I don't know. I don't see very many options here. So,
Because there sure ain't that many of them.
right. Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I have to, again, credit them for all this because this is not a thing that you see a lot of a 6th film that has this kind of care, and I really have to credit John Watts for being one of the guys who came up with the storyline. He clearly looked at this franchise and went, "We can do something with this.
Right.
Like, we can take it above and beyond what we're used to seeing without sacrificing the thing that the audience wants."
And we had like in a way, even though Final Destination is a pretty consistent franchise overall,
Oh,
except for
yeah,
the fourth.
outside of the 4th one.
Right. So 1, 2, 3, and 5 are all pretty good. They're all like solid films. So I would say they're all like 3, 3.5 kind of films. They're not like some films you go, they're excellent. They have a formula to them. So there is a case of diminishing returns, even like amongst the good ones. It's still kind of like, okay, we have the formulaic aspect of it. We know what we're doing, what we're doing. This is why it does better. This is why I think this might be my favorite one is that it
Mhm.
takes that formula and says, yeah, we know that formula. But we're
Shake
gonna
it up.
shake it up a little bit and like give you. They're not gonna totally make it a new formula. We're not giving you a complete different taste. We're just like adding some flavoring to it. We're gonna add some kick to it.
It's so funny because I remember every time we would talk about one of these, we'd go, "Man, It doesn't get better than this. And then every time we'd watch one of the sequels outside of the fourth one, we were like, no, no, it was better than I anticipated because I remember it differently, but it's like actually it moved the franchise forward in some capacity. And I think that I credit this in the same way that I credited Final Destination 5 is that Final Destination 5 also did that
Yeah.
because it really shook up the formula. One, the twist, brilliant. The ending of that movie where it's actually death was after them on the plane and it sets off the events of the first film.
Right.
Great.
Great twist. I remember seeing that going, that's the way to do a twist. That's wonderful.
And also that third act is hugely different
Right.
than any of the ones to that point, because that's the one that's, like, much more of, like, an action thriller almost,
Mhm.
just in a Final Destination film. So the fact that they kinda looked at that and they went, "What if we did something similar here where we shake up the formula, but we're still a Final Destination movie?" It made it thrilling, it made it fun, it made it fresh, and I really genuinely never knew where everything was going because they'd always juke you in a different way that you weren't quite anticipating.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Another thing that I think that you kind of alluded to it a little bit before, but I want to go a little bit deeper into it, is like the late 1990s, early 2000s. One of the things that really helped films out were great soundtracks, and I don't mean like
Mhm.
scores. I mean like they curate the proper music from the artists of the time or whatever, or not necessarily of the time, but they work for the soundtrack. Now, like people like Edgar Wright do that all the time now, and like Edgar Wright's music soundtracks are actually usually characters in the show or in the
Baby
film.
Driver especially.
Exactly. I love Baby Driver. I love what they didn't with that. But there's a lot of great songs that were just used really well. You got Bad Moon Rising, Ring of Fire was used. Shout, the shout was a typical wedding dance number kind of thing. I know it's not a wedding, but it was like that kind of thing. You mentioned raindrops keep falling on my head. When Air Supply, that one killed me. You have Eric listening to like this death
Mhm.
metal, and like his father just died, so he's also he switched it to the sad mix. And what comes on, it's Air Supply Without You, and it's like that is awesome. And then we have like the death scene to Air Supply Without You. What a great choice! And
Oh,
geez,
so good. And again, every little thing when they're driving around, in the RV and they're leaving,
yeah,
Spirit in the Sky starts playing
so good.
because it just the little things, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, the Kelly Clarkson one when
Yeah,
the girl is dying in the garbage truck is beyond brilliant. Like,
yeah, it's wonderful.
again, it's just all these little things they really lean in on the fun of it, and
Yeah.
I have to credit them for that, and they've even said that they're not rushing into making another one of these because it takes time to be this creative. Like,
Mhm.
you can't just do this just because.
I'm
You have to be
hoping
able to be innovative.
I'm hoping Warner Brothers takes that to heart and is gonna just try to rush it back because it was so successful. Because that's the wrong way to do it, my friend. That's
Mhm.
the wrong way to do it. Let it cook. There was 14 years in between the last two. Sometimes less is more, and sometimes
Yeah.
you can like let this breathe for a bit. Come back a couple years from now, like maybe 3 or 4 years. Also, to me, we can get another one. You know what I mean? It just
No, 100%. I mean, look, it's weirdly enough, it's the thing that makes the most sense, like, with Star Wars right now, right?
yeah.
We know that they really wanna get into the movies again, and they've been really pushing, and they're getting closer. Obviously, Mandalorian and Grogu comes out next year, but, like, they could have just as easily, after Rise of Skywalker, moved directly into an Episode 10,
The next movie.
but
Yeah, exactly.
they aren't, and I'm
Right.
glad that they're taking their time with it because if they're gonna do another Rey movie, I want it to be right. I
Right.
don't want it to be rushed. I don't want it to be done just because. I want those characters to get their due, and I'm noticing, like, John Boyega's posting a lot more about Star Wars now, and
You
so
see his one from today.
uh-huh,
Like,
that's
I
what
was
was
like,
making me think about it.
I'm like, yeah, he's okay. He's definitely coming back now. That's
Yeah,
why I
like,
feel like, yeah. If there was a
he
doubt before, like, and I kind of was like 50-50 on it because he'd say something, then he'd say something else. But after today's call, I'm kind of like, yeah, yeah, he's all in now. He's doing the
well,
training
yeah,
to get back to it.
'cause he went to that convention, he's like, "I've been listening to the fans."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Oh, shit."
well,
He's like, "I've been really happy to be here at this convention talking to the fans and listening to them talk about Star Wars." And I was like, "Oh, he's
talked to
100% coming back."
Daisy. He talked to Daisy Ridley.
Huh?
They mentioned talking to Daisy Ridley recently, and too. And I was like, well, of course you did, because you're getting ready to do this again.
Well,
And
and
good
the
for him.
thing is, the worst kept secret, obviously, in Hollywood through all this was that he and Kennedy did meet, and they did bury the hatchet, and they were really working on getting that back together.
Yeah, it wasn't even like I think the funny thing was like they always said hatchet. Like it wasn't like it was like obviously John Boyega was not happy the way things went down, but I think Kathleen
Yeah.
Kennedy understood that and like
Right.
well, I mean Lucasfilm also Lucasfilm shouldn't take as much heat for it as much because quite frankly, if you look back to the days, Bob
Yeah.
Iger came out and said like they pretty much forced them to rush.
Yes.
Like we had a film like Last Jedi took place, and all of a sudden, like Colin Trevorrow was out. They brought J.J. Abrams back in as like a Hail Mary desperate measure because but Disney wouldn't let them move. They
Right.
had to hit that mark in the theater.
As it
And
was
so
Iger's
J.J.
last year, and he wanted to have all those billion-dollar films under his
Right.
belt.
Exactly. And that's why JJ came back was because they knew that JJ could do it quickly enough because he'd been there and done 7. He could make it work. But I think he does. You know, I know a lot of people hate that movie, and that's fine. Whatever your mouth may vary.
You and I both like it. Let's call it what it is.
And yeah, I like especially specifically what I think about how it got made. I give it a lot of slack, and I get what it's doing. Like it's fine. It does a good enough job. Under some tough circumstances. One of those tough circumstances be unfortunately that John Boyega's Finn was, you know, given the short end of the stick, shall we say. So give the chance to have that right that wrong, right that thing. I think that's something Kathleen Kennedy would love to do. And I think that now it's gonna happen. I think so.
How am I just realizing that Final Destination Bloodlines has a 93% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes? That
Wow.
just goes to tell you how well put together this movie is.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me that a movie, again, this far down the line in a horror franchise, 14 years after the fact, 93% of critics are saying that this is a good movie.
I
Not,
don't even. I
and
think
that's a horror film.
that's more than the first film. I think by far.
Oh, it is. This is the best reviewed by quite a bit.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's very impressive. And it's like, I think part of the idea is these next generation, these younger filmmakers now, they're the people who grew up on these things, and like they're good filmmakers who want to do those concepts well. And some of the movies in the beginning, like we love them for being goofy and everything else, but they were just kind of having fun with it. They weren't like they were just trying to make a fun movie, not necessarily a good movie. These guys are good filmmakers who love that aspect. They want to make it fun, and they happen to also make it good.
Yeah, I think that we're at a really interesting point of a lot of these properties. It was what Mangold did really well with Dial of Destiny. It's what a lot of those guys who grew up with those movies, if it's done the right way because they have reverence for the property, it comes through.
Yeah.
And you also still want to make a good movie with it. Like, you know, mileage may vary obviously on Jurassic World as a franchise, but that first Jurassic World movie, Trevorrow knew what he was doing. He finally opened the park and let the park go crazy.
Right.
And that was the right move because that was the thing that as kids growing up, if you were watching that movie, you were like, man, I would go to that park.
Yeah.
So Final Destination with this one, you have a lot of people who were like, you know what? Let's take this and run with it, but like put characters you're going to care about in the middle of it. Make some super inventive kills on top of it. Like, let's have fun with it. Let's wink at the audience. Let's toy with them. And this movie toys with you in the best way. Like,
Yes.
the entire time when you're watching it, again, I said it earlier, I was actually surprised how often I wasn't sure where it was going to go because the movie would juke when I thought it was going to go a certain way.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It went one way. It looks like, and because we're so used to that franchise, we're used to where it's going. We're like, we've been on this trail before, and all of a sudden this is like we're gonna make our own trail from here though. So it works.
Yeah, it's great. I am shocked how much I like this movie.
I
And
was
like, yeah, and I don't even mean like low key like this movie. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go see it again in theaters.
yeah.
That's how much I enjoyed it. And again, credit where credit's due. I genuinely believed that the heroes were actually going to survive this one. I genuinely believed when we got to the end, we were going to have, for the first time in a while, someone who like truly survived the series.
Excellent. Like that looked like that's how it was going to end. It looked like we were going to have
Did. And then they fucking pull the rug out from under you and they die by log truck.
By log truck, which is the best part. That's what we're talking about.
Train and log, but still.
And logs. But logs are the death and everything else. And that's what's it's the funny and great part about it. Like, yeah, you're going to call back that now. Perfect. Chef's kiss.
Well, because they throughout the movie they really toy with that too. There's a lot of like clever foreshadowing.
Yes.
Throughout the movie, and again, I'm now terrified of pennies.
Yeah.
Specifically that penny, because that penny is evil.
That penny's evil. It's going to pop up when you least expect it.
At a lemonade stand with an
Oh,
old woman who decides to buy lemonade.
how long you got? How long you got? That's what he said to her. He said,
Oh my god.
"Oh,
I
she
just
did it."
can't believe that they really went that way. And, man, the more I think about it, I can't stop thinking about every single one of the deaths and just how, like, hysterically over the top each single one is,
Yeah,
and I don't hate it. Like, it makes me that much happier.
exactly. It's
That
kind
kid
of,
was crushed by a piano.
I know, it's so good too, and it couldn't have happened to a better kid to be crushed by a piano.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right because it seems like there's a way, there's a vibe to these films where, like, sometimes horror films when they go over the top, it's like it ruins some of the thing. But for this particular film and this particular vibe, it worked even better that it was over the top. You want it to be over the top because it's also done well though. It's not over the top and take you out. It's over the top and makes you go, ooh, ooh, ah.
You know what it reminds me of? You know when you watch, like, we've been watching The Studio, we've been texting about it as it
Yep.
drops, um, but those, like, super cringy comedies that make you feel awkward.
Yes.
That's what this felt like in, like, the best way, because
Exactly.
every time something would happen, you're right, I was like, "Oh, oh no, oh no," and I did this a couple of times at the theater where you,
Right.
like, put your hand down, but you're, like, still watching, because it would just be a certain thing would happen, you're like, "No, no, 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 no," like, "Oh, no, 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 no."
And you're talking to two guys who've seen like millions of horror films and like we're
Yeah,
used to this stuff. It doesn't like affect us anymore, really. But like it still kind of had those moments like, oh, you have that.
it just hit.
Yeah, it hit hard. It hit
It
well.
hit hard, and again, I just never quite knew where things were gonna land, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And it's been a little while where I've seen a horror film that actually left me kinda like that, where I actually was kind of in the dark. I thought Hard Eyes did a great job of that too, actually, now that I think about it. This year's been full of a lot of really cool, like, little things like that. The Monkey again, we can't say enough good things about The Monkey, and honestly, legitimately, if you have not seen The Monkey, but you liked this, please go watch The Monkey
Yeah.
because you will not be disappointed. The Monkey, again, has, like, a very similar tone, a very similar vibe, um, and they are arguably kind of covering a lot of the same
Yeah.
ground in some capacity, which is so odd to say, but it's just kinda true.
Right. Yeah. It's like it is a even though I think I know Stephen King's book came out first, but it is Stephen King's like version of a Final Destination type movie in a way.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's Stephen King's version through the lens of what feels like Wes Anderson, but with the
yeah,
dark humor that Osgood Perkins could only have.
right.
And
Absolutely.
it's just so wonderful, and I feel the same way about this. I cannot wait to see this movie again. Um, I can't remember the last time a horror movie made me cry. And again, that's a credit to Tony Todd and that last scene.
Yeah.
Um, I can't believe we have something like that captured on film. It's the same way that if you've ever seen Night at the Museum 3 and Robin Williams gives that last speech, you almost think he's just talking to the audience at that point, and it's really strange and really poignant. There's not a lot of that in the world. Some of these guys were so special. They knew where they were leaving a lasting mark, and it shows.
And they want benevolence enough to understand what the world gave to them and the relationship we have with them. So they get that chance to be able to give that kind of a farewell is something magical and gives you that kind of closure and the kind of just that warm feeling. They're like, okay, all
Yeah,
right, Tony, we love you. Rest on now.
dude.
Uh, Good stuff.
Okay. So, do you have anything else that you want to say before we start ranking this thing? Because I can't remember, and I know you're going to tell us. I'm so curious what we rated the other films
Yeah, I'm gonna
leading
bring
up
it
to.
up. Yep. Yeah, it is like it's fun. It's there's gonna be a shorter episode, which is funny for us when we like a film. We usually go on forever, but like I said before, we don't have any notes. We couldn't take any notes. It's all about our feelings. We want to
Yeah.
watch it again and everything else. So maybe we'll have more to say later on about it. But yeah, let me get into our ratings because we always we rate things on a scale of 1 to 11 here on the PLD Projects Network. We always turn things up to 11. We were pretty consistent with this franchise, but here is what we ranked it so far. The original Final Destination, I gave a 6.5. You gave a 7.5.
Hmm.
Final Destination 2, I gave a 7.5. You also gave it a 7.5.
Hmm.
Final Destination 3, I gave an 8. you gave an 8.
Okay.
The Final Destination, I gave a 1.5. You gave it
Yep.
a 2.
Yep. That sounds right.
And Final Destination 5, I gave it an 8.5, and you also gave it an 8.5. Scarily, we are so close in our
That's so
scores.
wild to me. But that makes sense. That is 100% kind of what I was anticipating. I actually wanted to hear you say it here. I thought about asking you before we went live, and I was more curious to hear it now because with that being said, I think I'm giving this a 10.
I should share my screen because I already wrote
You're
down
not
my
joking.
score.
Are you
I gave it
serious?
I gave it a
Oh
10.
my god. Are you kidding me?
I gave it a 10. Let me just because you see me right now, I did not like touch the screen or anything else. Let me just
I just can't
share the
believe it. How
screen
are
real
we
quick.
so
I don't know
similar
if you can. I'm
sometimes?
gonna have to. I might have to zoom in. I don't know if I can.
No, but I can see it, and that's so funny. Paul is showing for the audio listeners, Paul is showing right now all of our things on the screen, like all of our ratings, and
There we
sure
go.
as hell, this guy did exactly what I did, and he already had it written down before he'd even asked me. That's
Uh,
insane. Are you joking me? Our
very,
scores
very.
are almost identical across the board outside of the first one because I
Yeah.
liked the first one a little more than you.
And you like the Final Destination just a hair more than me as well. That's about it, though. Yeah,
Oh my god.
it's kind of shocking. It is. I mean, it is. It shouldn't be by now, but we have the same brain. But it
Well,
makes
we share a single brain cell, to be
it's
fair.
that's right.
It's something your wife legitimately told us today, before we even hopped on here, was that we share a brain cell, and that one brain cell is also shared with 4 orange tabby cats.
Yes, because they all actually act the same as us, pretty much.
Yeah,
Uh,
'cause you have 3 and I have 1, so we, amongst the 6 of us, share a single brain cell according
yeah.
to Kim, and
Okay.
that's fine.
That's accurate. It's
Yeah.
absolutely accurate. So, uh,
So a
all right, my
10,
friend.
10 from you, 10 from me.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is now that you pulled that up and I was able to see it, this franchise now sits at like a 7 pretty much across the board, which is actually, considering how bad the 4th movie is, I love
Impressive.
that. Like, that's
Yeah,
great.
that's
One
impressive. I
movie
mean,
almost pulls down the entire franchise, but everything else is good, so
yeah, seriously. I mean, if you look at it the other way, take that one out. The lowest score you gave to any of the franchise was 7.5 out of 11.
yeah.
I gave the first one a 6.5, which is the lowest score I gave. So either way, that when your lowest score is that, that says something. Unfortunately, Final Destination does come in and wreck that. But
Final
I guess
Destination is the Final Destination is
the
real bad.
shits.
You ever wanna hear us really go after a movie and, like, not nicely? That's where you're at, 'cause I have to say, man, for all of you out there who were commenting and tweeting at us and taking pictures of us, during our Superman 4 review, and I'm not joking, like, this happened from more than one person, more than one comment of people saying that they love it the most when we don't enjoy talking about a movie. A hearty fuck you. That was so difficult. Superman 4 broke me in a way that I did not anticipate feeling. You're
It's
all
very rare.
monsters.
It's very
Yeah.
rare. I have to pull PJ across the finish line. Uh,
Yeah. A hearty fuck you to all of you. Reefism is the only good person in the entire group who was like, he was like, I don't like when you guys don't like things. And I was like, I don't like when we
like
don't like things. But every once in a while, it's okay. So the Final Destination review, if you want to go back and check that out, it's a masterclass of tearing a movie apart. It's up there with our Annabelle review.
Mhm.
One that I really stand by is our Annabelle review.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good to be had in that if you liked seeing us being angry.
And I would also throw in there for hell of it, Nightmare on Elm Street 2010.
Oh, ooh, that's a bad one.
Another bad one. Another bad one.
But I had more to say about that movie than Superman 4. What does that say?
It's true. That's very true. That's very true.
Oh my god.
All right. I think that's going to do it for us, folks. At this point, we have recording this, especially on a Monday night, because we're doing a two for this week. We actually going to record Superman Returns tomorrow. So you get twice the two middle-aged geeks on film this week. Lucky you. Probably going to mean you're going to split the views, and it'll probably be our two worst reviewed episodes. But hey,
Yeah, but we're playing the algorithm. People seem to like this movie. So, if this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you had a good time. Hit the like and subscribe button below because we're really happy to have you. If you haven't already, we also have a Patreon and you can check that link down below. And if you like, supporting people and keeping the lights on in the studio, if you join the Patreon today, you have at least 5 episodes of Marvel content as we break down the MCU in the same way that we're doing right now.
Right.
This is for first-time listeners. Go hit that button, subscribe today, and get 5 new episodes directly to your inbox.
Patreon.com/PLD Projects. You can go to, or you can just join the YouTube membership here as well. There's another way you can do it. It's also here on our YouTube page.
That was such a it was like I was a 90s, the people who sell things on the television, the infomercial guys,
Very slick. I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you.
I never do that plug either.
I'm so glad you did because I don't like having you do it. So thanks for doing it for me.
I never knew that you didn't like doing it. I would have done it every single time for you if you had told me that.
Well, maybe I'll let you do it from now on a little bit here and there, at least some of the time anyway. All right, that's going to do it for us this week, folks. We will see you again. We'll see you later on in the week. Superman Returns.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Superman Returns. If you've never listened to us talk about Superman before, you're going to be either horrified or pleasantly surprised on our take on Superman Returns, a movie that is quite polarizing, apparently.
what I will say is we both love this film and consider it a masterpiece when compared to Superman 4. So there's also correct. That. So there's that.
I think most things are.
That's true. We got Superman come up, and then of course we also got some new other entries. That's the thing about doing all the franchises we've been doing. We actually get a couple of other new franchise entries coming up soon that we're gonna have to cover, such as Ballerina, because we did the John Wick franchise, such as Conjuring: The Last Rites, which the trailer actually, crossing my fingers, it actually looked pretty good, despite the fact that neither of us like the director, Michael Chavez. Whatever. I don't have anything bad to say about him. I just don't like his movies generally, but this one looked okay. So we'll have to see if that can.
It helps that it looks like the first one,
right?
I not to be that guy, and so obviously they showed the trailer for that before this, and
I got a shit ton of horror trailers before this. I was like 20 horror trailers. I was like, I love it. I love what I'm here for.
But I didn't. So we watched the trailer last week when it dropped, and I hadn't really thought about it again. And so then it's playing, and I was like, "Oh, it's the first movie again." And that's not a bad thing, but it's very clear that they're really leaning in on making it familiar for the last film, right. And that's okay. Again, that's not a complaint. I didn't really realize it.
It's basically it's Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga being Tom Cruise saying, "Trust me, one last time."
That's right. I was just like, how long do we let it sit there on the awkward silence of it all? Or Vin or the Bad Boys or whoever, because they're always either asking you to ride or die one last time,
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, PJ, where can the folks find you?
You guys can find me on all the social medias, wherever social medias are sold, at PJ_Campbell. Please find me over on pretty much Blue Sky and Instagram. Do not worry about finding me on the bad place. I just don't go there anymore. Something our friends continue to learn if they message me and I just do not message them back. The bad place is dead to me. So there's that.
Fair enough. You can find me also on the good place, Blue Sky. That's where I go most of the time. You can find me all over all over this channel here. I do all sorts of shows, Star Wars, Holy Snokes podcast every week with Matty Gunner. We just finished Andor. Going to do a Rogue One rewatch this week because we went in from Andor into Rogue One. I got Class Action, which is going to come back in end of June. We do that once a month. And you were pointing at me. Something else.
The best moment in Final Destination Bloodlines is when the kid goes to eat the peanut butter cup because he's going to try to kill himself with the peanut butter cup, and nothing happens. And he goes, what is it? Eric's looking at him. He goes, it's so good.
Yes.
I know.
Oh, I know. Well, just like that, podcasting with you, my friend, it's just so good.